There was no real middle person there. There's your line of contact right the way through, be it Saturday, be it Sunday. Steele Raymond and Justin and some other advisors and the other people that were close to me in the business. I had a fantastic team around me. It's the personal touch that was really, really important, rather than a huge faceless companies, you're just a number.
Ryan, welcome. Thanks for being here. So you built a very nice company, Empower Energy, which we sold to Good Energy PLC. The exercise of the video is we're trying to unpick a little bit the experience of selling the company, what you thought of the process, some of the emotional highs, some of the emotional lows, and it's really just to inform others that are potentially selling their company. Could you just give me an overview of the business that you built up and, maybe what the company did, where it started and how big it was when you sold it?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So, I'm an electrical engineer by background, and prior to Empower Energy, had Empower Electrical. And then in 2010, as solar was the feed-in tariffs were kicking off in the UK, set up Empower Energy. And it was literally 2010-11 was when it sort of boomed. The feed-in tariff went mad, and it seemed like a good options. And yeah, by the time I met you, we were turning over in excess of 10 million a year. It was a great business, but I just fancy perhaps something a little bit steadier without the constant highs and lows and employing as many people as we were up to.
Was that the main driving factor then in terms of your kind of decision making of what you wanted the future to be, was to smooth that out for you personally? You wanted a steadier life, or?
I think I've always been very ambitious, and I doubled the company size a number of times over the years. The next logical step was to double it in size again. My personal appetite for that, thinking of having double the amount of staff, wasn't necessarily where I saw myself. And if I'm honest, it's like I still had that ambition. I still wanted to get twice as big, but perhaps without quite the level of responsibility of employing everyone and having 40 people's mortgages hanging around my neck every month.
There was obviously a time where you said, right, now is the time to sell. So perhaps you could just talk us through, from that moment of saying, right, I think I want to sell. How did that, from your side, sit in terms of saying, how do you make this happen? How do you sell the company?
So I think, and this is probably not uncommon for a lot of business owners, I constantly always got solicited by lots and lots of people talking about, do you want to sell your business? I'd never ever really seriously considered it at all. I think there were a number of things that happened with particular employees where I was far too close to everyone in the business, and then imagining that on the next level with double the amount of staff and all the rest of it, I was like, is this something I really want to do? I think there's a degree of work takes up too big a part of your life. I wanted to be happy, so that was really important to me. I've got a fairly young family, so they were getting older, and I wanted them to be able to enjoy the fruits of my labour and not constantly be working away and not seeing them. And so then one of the companies that solicited to me, I thought, well, it's worth a chat. So I had a chat. It opened my eyes to the possibility that, this could be possible.
Yeah, so we engaged, and of course Steele Raymond were part of that mix from a legal point of view. You'll have thought about the right buyer for a business like yours, I guess. You'd have thought, well, if I want someone to buy my business, who's it going to be? Did you have an idea by what the general shape that company would be?
There's things like morals and things like that in business that are very, very important to me. So that was important. I wanted to be in a business that I'm happy to work with and be with people that I like, and I think a moral compass is correct.
Did you worry about employees, customers, suppliers, relationships you've built up over the 10 years more? Did you worry about how they would react to the idea that the business was going to be sold and what the future might hold?
I think, to be honest, they were a very big part of me making my decisions. So I took into account all of them with, and their future and where I thought they'd be best placed, as well as myself. But it was certainly a consideration to make sure that everyone was looked after post the transaction.
Apart from just one or two key management in the business, you chose not to inform the employees about the process. Was that a concern for you that they would, if you'd let them know about the fact that you intended to sell the company? There was obviously some concern there from your side.
I think being realistic, it's very easy for people to get the wrong end of the stick and not really understand what it means or what it entails. So I certainly wouldn't advise going to the level of telling everyone. If I go back to the Monday where I did tell everyone, there were lots and lots of questions, and then probably a little bit of surprise a week later when everything was still exactly as it was. So it was pleasant for them to see it was all exactly as it was. But if I'd done that through the process, then it may have created all sorts of uncertainty that I wouldn't advise. I certainly would advise involving those that are really close to you, because it made me even closer to those key members of staff, and we're still very, very close now. And I've seen it with funnily enough, other business that didn't do that, and I think it can be quite damaging not to involve those that are really close to you, that you want to stay working with or stay close to.
How did you find the legal process when that started, in terms of due diligence and inquiries and all that sort of stuff? And I can see you starting to smile there, because it's quite an intense process. There's a lot of questions there. But how was it for you? Because I know you're very active, busy running the business. You're at the front line in terms of sales and everything else. What was the time management? And just talk me through that.
I mean, I can't say I wasn't warned by Justin very early in the process. I think in the big scheme of things, we were lucky. We decided to go to a deadline, which I think was one of the benefits. Initially, it seemed like it would be impossible, but I that's what I do for a living, is impossible. So I was like, right, we've got something to aim for, which was great. Let's work hard towards this. The bar is very accommodating, very reasonable, and they'd literally just undertaken some other acquisitions very recently, so I think they were fairly well honed with having a lot of the things prepared, ready, and to be honest, I had a fantastic team around me. You know, everyone pulled out all the stops. You guys at Steele Raymond and Justin and some other advisors and the other people that were close to me in the business, to make sure everything kept flowing as quickly as it could.
Were there any points or doubts in the process where you thought we're either not going to hit the deadline or the deal's going to fail for some other reason? Never. That's good to hear.
It was one of those, to be honest. Over my career, there's many times I've gone into things where people have told me it's impossible, and that's something I get something out of. I'm not going to pretend if it hadn't been for the team around me, then I wouldn't have had the faith I had, but everyone was very committed to doing it with me. I mean, the actual final day was on a Sunday, so everyone was working all weekend. And I mean, I think finally everything was set up at 9 o'clock on Sunday night, but we all worked to get that done.
What were the emotions like, kind of, you know, on the day of completion? It was that Sunday. What was it like on the Monday? I
was set to announce to all the staff at 7 o'clock on the Monday morning. So we'd hired a local pub hotel just to have everyone a bacon sarnie and a coffee. Everyone obviously wondering what on earth they're being called into at 7 o'clock on a Monday morning. But that was as when it could be announced to the market. So it was like I was very keen to make sure no one heard from a third party. They heard from me first. It was a lot for them to take in. On the whole, it went down very well. So I was reassured by that. It wasn't, you know, I was hoping it would be like that anyway. Obviously, some extra questions from some people, but it went down pretty well. And then the actual completion exchange happened on the Tuesday. And if I'm honest, I suppose I always imagine, like, you know, I don't know, being in your office or something until 10 o'clock at night signing documents, and it's all done on DocuSign and very uneventful at the end of it.
And what about the highs and the lows? Because there must have been a point in that process where there was a high point where you remember and going, yeah, that was good. Maybe it was the end of the deal. Maybe it was something else.
It certainly was stressful, you know, because ultimately it was important to keep my commitment, as I always have done with the business, because I wanted to make sure that it was flying as well as it could be. And it wasn't really a position where I could take my foot off the throttle with that. Yeah, to be honest, it all went through so fast. There weren't any particular highs or lows. It was just in the thick of it, getting on with it.
I remember one element of it myself from my side, which was it's not unusual. It sort of comes up pretty much with every time we sell a company is the notion of how much you get at the end, because of course everybody's selling a company, so it wants to know, well, what's the pound, shillings and pence, and of course is that if you're using, and you might remember the terminology, a completion accounts process, which is what you used, it's a moving target. The number moves, and I remember having discussions with you around that, and it still is from my side enormously complicated to explain to anybody. It really is, and because no business owner is aware of that process. But how did you feel about it from your side?
I think, as you had said to me very, very early in the process, Justin, if you want to give me 2 years, I can make this absolute prime for the absolute best you could possibly get out of it. But timing was a big importance to me. And one thing I came to terms with was it was the right time and it was the right thing. And even if there are a couple of things perhaps I could have got a bit more, it was the right time and deal for me. So I was happy.
You only learn what you learn when you actually get into the process. And I suppose 2 years before the process, you don't know what it's going to involve or what you're going to have to do. Is there anything you've learned in the process that you would advise others facing the process?
I think, if I'm honest, if I look at it, inadvertently, I had done a fairly good job of where it was at. The silly little things, like I say, where there's things in the business that didn't need to be there, that didn't ultimately affect the bottom line value, could have been taken out. I could have perhaps set up things like property slightly better without it being in the company name and stuff. It's all a balancing act between how profitable you're going to look and the multiple it's going to give you and all the rest of it. But like I say, I think in the big scheme of things, I was happy overall in the end. And I think that's very, very important that you find that, in your heart of hearts, when you've done all that, you're at peace and move on.
So if somebody was starting, if there was somebody listening to this that owns their own company and, is thinking of selling, if you were to sort of give them one or two, let's say, top tips, if you like, to saying, this is what you should do, what would it be?
Certainly structure things that don't need to be in the business, so perhaps they're out of them in good time. Seek good financial advice. That was certainly something that I found invaluable as well. I had a good tax advice from good accountants, and they could sort of advise as well with preparing things and how things can best look. And at the end of the day, just do what you do well and make the business as successful as it can be.
And a slightly sort of off-piece question, but and it's hopefully not a leading question. We obviously had a successful experience, both Steele Raymond and ourselves guiding the business. But if you're advising other companies in selecting advisors to work with, lawyers, M&A people, whatever, what would you say to them? Would you say pitch high, spend the most amount of money that you can spend and get the best of the best of the best? Do it cheap, do it without?
I think it's the personal touch, and that's very much how I've always been with what I respect in business and who I choose to do business with. It's at the end of the day, Justin, it was always, and that was how you spoke to me when I first spoke to you, it's me that's going to deal this with you. You've got all of your researchers and stuff around you and other people to assist you, but I like that, being able to pick up the phone. Exactly the same with Sean Guppy. There was no real middle person there, but ultimately, yeah, it's the personal touch that was really, really important, and having those, rather than a huge faceless companies that you're just a number.
What's life been like for you post completion? I mean, it's when was closing? It was about 8 months ago.
Yeah, so I've taken on a new role, business development director for the group. We've recruited now, there's a new MD, so I've got a boss for the first time. And it's going well. There's a lot of change going on at the moment as we're trying to sort of amalgamate everything together. But it's certainly lots for me to get my teeth into, which is what I enjoy.
If you look back, we set out on a mission. You gave me a specific target. The goal was to achieve an exit. And if you look back and there's a degree of luck involved with this, and I'm not looking for too many specifics, but broadly speaking, with the ownership structure that you have now and what you're doing now, did it pretty much hit the mark for you?
It did, yeah. I mean, I suppose in my early, very naive days of just pen in the air, I perhaps imagined slightly higher, but to be fair, in the end, it hit exactly where I wanted it to. And the one bits that perhaps I could have changed, I understood why I didn't. But I'm very happy overall. And to be honest, an added bonus is that the shares that I had have now increased in value as well. So I think all in all, it was the right move.
Serendipity, they call it. Luck.
yeah, something like that.
A little bit of luck and good fortune. Okay.
Fantastic.
Ryan, thank you so much.
Appreciate your time.